I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too.
People often ask me, do you have favorite programs that you put together? And I do have what I call a top 5. And this is among the top 5. I really like this, and I hope you do too. I don't like the circumstances, but I like the story and the in-depth research. I was telling Janet here that I don't think I could have done any more research on this story. I think I found everything that there was to find. Can't hear me? Okay, thank you. And you be my guide, will you please? Okay. I do want to acknowledge this is the story of the murder of the Alexandria Chief of Police, John Ellis. And in the audience today are Ellis family members. I'm going to ask them to stand. Would you do that? If you're a member of the Ellis family, please stand. Probably do. No pressure there at all. She's going to get me wired up here, so. Thank you for coming. I encouraged many of you the last time. If you remember, I told you if you had a vacation plan, cancel it. I think I told you if you were going to get sick, don't. And if you were going to die, postpone it. Because you don't want to miss this or the next one. I think they're terrific programs. The title of the program is 36 Days Alexandria 1911, and for 36 days in 1911, the city of Alexandria was upside down. The 1911 shooting of Alexandria, Indiana police officers, Chief of Police John L. Ellis and Patrolman Virgil Kirkman. A picture, and there's several of them floating around here today, and you'll see some of them later, I believe. This is the Ellis family, and this is the Chief of Police here. Day 1. According to Laura Walker, her husband, James Wilson Walker, age 30, and Rufus Warren, age 27, were longtime friends. They started out from Walker's home at 933 West Washington Street on Saturday night, March 4th, 1911, to make the rounds in Alexandria, and you see on the screen their home. The house was described as being humble and of faded boxcar red with an old board walk in front and on the east side. It faced the north and had 5 rooms, one of which was a shanty shed for the kitchen. Warren, Walker's pal, had lived with the Walkers for several years. They were both from the South, and their antecedents were quick shooters in the southern mountains. It would be their last taste of freedom for a long time. After having supper together, they went in search of whiskey. I was curious as to where they would have gone. In the crime area, I found the following taverns: the Gem, the Fawn, L.M. Howard, the Oak, G. Sherry, the Trolley, the Welcome, and the Star. All of those were possibilities of taverns in the crime area. I believe they picked the Welcome, but I'm not sure. Oh, one more, Noble's Place at the corner of Washington and Canal. The place they picked, I think, was this building here, which was the Welcome, only because it would have been the first one they came to. I don't know. It doesn't make any difference where they stopped in. They bought a pint at a social club and drank most of it, which Walker later said left him drunk. Booze Walker would later say that he'd been in the habit of drinking all of his life. Entering the May hardware store at 107 North Harrison Street, Walker purchased 7 steel-jacketed bullets from owner Walter May and his clerk Lee Cloud. These were added to the other bullets that both Walker and Warren had purchased sometime before. They were for a .32 Colt automatic pistol, which Walker had acquired from a dealer in Alexandria, paying $2 down on it. Leaving there, they went to a pool room where Warren shot out a small electric lamp and proceeded to search to the second floor where Alva Ice had a social club. I want you to remember the name Alva Ice. This is the Walter May hardware store at 107 North Harrison Street. Mr. May was in business in Alexandria for approximately 50 years. His hardware store was all up and down Harrison Street, I found using the city directories. But only 1 year was he here at 107 North Harrison, and that was the year that the bullets were bought from him, and that's the store. So this picture is 1911. That's the site of it today. Some more scenes along Harrison Street: the Model Drugstore, the Opera House on the left, the first building on the left. This would have been 1911 in Alexandria. 1911 billiard parlors. Well, I was also interested, so they went to a billiard parlor. Where did they go? Well, in the crime area, there was the Robinson and McCord, John T. Rock, Stubbs and Hollenbeck. Ice would not admit them, and Warren drew the revolver on Ice. Ice forced him to return the gun to his pocket and then drove the two from his place. Ice said later he believed they intended to rob him but lost their nerve. Walker later said the same thing. Then they plotted to rob William W. Miller's pawn shop. That would be the Alexandria Loan Company, located at 113 North Canal Street, and went into the alley near the shop to prepare. 20 minutes had elapsed from the purchase of the bullets to the alley. Warren gave Walker the revolver, which was now loaded. Walker then tied a red handkerchief over their faces to conceal their identity. Don't think anybody noticed that, do you? Warren stood guard on the door while Walker went inside. Walker was wearing a light slouch hat and a coat wrong side out when he entered the store. Pointing the gun at Miller, Walker demanded money and was given about $16. Walker then demanded diamonds from the safe. Walker fired a shot which crashed through the counter downward to make Miller hurry. This is an ad for Miller's secondhand store. It's set right here, now a parking lot, the side of the pawn shop. In this parking lot where this red car is would be where his pawn shop was located. Rufus Warren. Standing outside the shop was Walker's friend and accomplice, Rufus Warren, aged 27. Both men were Alexandria residents and employed as plate glass workers. Warren was single, but Walker was married with 4 children. Rufus Warren, he was the son of James and Mary Warren, and they lived at 706 Minnesota Avenue, and this is that address in Alexandria today. While the robbery was in progress, Mrs. C.W. Byerly and Mrs. J.C. Bratton saw the robbery. This is an advertisement for the electrical and plumbing store that he ran. This is that building, and his business was in the bottom of this building, and right across the alley was the pawn shop. So the ladies were walking by when they saw what was going on. They called the police from the Kent House, located on the corner of Church and Canal Streets. Well, the Kent House is gone. It's now the post office in Alexandria, but this was the hotel, and I have a picture of it here. That's the Kent House in Alexandria, where they went over just a half a block across the street. They went up to notify the police of a robbery in progress, and you see another view of the Kent House. Patrolman Virgil Kirkman. Patrolman Virgil Kirkman, age 23, a member of the force for only 3 weeks, and Fred Stokes rushed to the scene. Apparently, Warren had seen them approaching and left his post outside. Not drawing his gun, Kirkman entered the store and Walker fired at him 3 times, not heeding the officer's warning to throw up his hands. The shots were fatal as he lived for about 2.5 hours. A post-mortem examination of Kirkman was conducted by Coroner Albright, who was assisted by Dr. Schmaus. One bullet entered the left cheek and passed through the brain, coming out at the base of the skull. Another entered the back, perforating the lung. A third one entered the shoulder blade, passing through the liver and abdominal cavity. Part of the fingers on the left hand were also shot away. Remember that. Kirkman died at the Alexandria Hospital at 11:40 that night. Walker later said, "He did not act quick enough, and I shot him. I think the first shot hit him in the face. I shot again as he fell, and then as I stepped over his body, I shot him again." As Walker was fleeing the pawn shop, the other patrolman, Fred Stokes, gave pursuit, and a total of 7 gunshots, 5 by Stokes and 2 by Walker, were exchanged between the two. Walker fled south on Canal Street to Washington, west on Washington to West Street, then south to Berry Street. It was near the Christian church at the corner that Stokes lost sight of him. During the chase on Washington, Walker shot out some streetlights. While on Washington, he slipped and fell. Later, he said that during the chase, he lost his loose cartridges and all but about $4 in money. So now he's killed a man for $4. Someone ran from the house and asked, "What's wrong?" Walker shoved the gun in his face and told him to get back in the house quick. After losing Stokes, he fled to his parents' house and told them what had happened. Word was sent to the Anderson Police Department and Sheriff Jack Mountain requesting their assistance. Mountain was the immediate past Alexandria Chief of Police and had been replaced by John Ellis. The sheriff and 3 patrolmen quickly arrived and began a search for Warren. A tip from Alva Ice led officers to the Washington Street Commons area near the former Matchbox Saloon, now a cigar store, where Walker was arrested. Warren confessed the crime and told that Walker could probably be found at his parents' home. Crime area cigar stores: 211 West Washington, Bicknell, 120 West Washington, Charles Brown, and 201 West Washington, Walter Davis. In 1970, the Eagle Saloon occupied 201 West Washington. There's an ad for it. Now, to reconstruct for you what I've just said, Walker and Warren came up Washington Street from the Walker's home, had lunch, I think, or supper here, stopped to get a drink here at the Welcome Saloon, went across the street to Mr. May's hardware store to purchase the bullets, went up Harrison Street here just a half a block to where the Fawn pool parlor was located at 114 North Harrison. That's where they shot up the place, and Alva Ice kicked him out. They then decided they would rob the pawn shop, so they came down this alley and got all covered up to rob the pawn shop. While in the process of doing that, the 2 women were walking along the sidewalk, saw that, came back to the Kent house to make the phone call to the police. The police arrived, and down the street fled Warren and Walker. Walker went on this way. Warren stopped here in the Commons area by the cigar store, and that's where he was arrested. So you can see just in a short block here what all had happened. A scene, much like it would have looked in 1911 in Alexandria. This would have been the pool hall. They would have entered presumably this door here and gone to the 2nd floor where they encountered Alva Ice. They then came down and went down this alley to prepare for the robbery, stopped here to go in. Warren was left outside as a lookout. We know what kind of job he did. As soon as he saw the police coming, he took off. And that's the cigar store. Warren would have been arrested here in this intersection of Canal and Washington Street. But Walker proceeded on west on Washington Street, shooting out some street lights, it said, till he got up to West Street, and then turned at Berry and West. And this is where Stokes pursued him. Officer Stokes pursued him to that point, but then due to darkness, lost track of him. So again, from the pawn shop, south to Washington, then south here to the Christian church. This is where he lost sight of him. I believe this is what happened because of Walker's known penchant for walking on the railroad tracks. After he left the church, he made his way south to the Lake Erie and Western Railroad and followed that, past his own home, past where he used to work, out to his parents' house, just walking along the railroad track. I'm sure he did that to avoid walking on the sidewalks and the streets because by now the authorities are looking for him. So he stayed on the railroad tracks. I believe that's what happened. No way to find that out for sure, but I believe that's it. At 11181 Virginia Avenue. Meanwhile, Walker had made his way to his parents' house at the West End. This is the property today. Didn't look like that in 1911. The home of Joseph and Martella Walker was located on the west side of Virginia Avenue, across the street from the Pan American Plate Glass Company factory on West Washington. That's where Walker and Warren both worked, in that plate glass factory. This is a picture I found of the 1911 view of the Walker house. Apologize for the quality of the picture, but when you're dealing with something that old, that's what you have to deal with. Hunting Walker. Chief Ellis and Patrolman Northcutt of Anderson were the first to enter the house, going in at the kitchen door shown on the side of the rear of the house, back here. Patrolman Beeman was near the front gate, and Alva Ice was stationed at the gate. Aren't you curious about Alva Ice? Well, stay tuned. Patrolman Fred Stokes was stationed near the old log stable at the rear. Mrs. Joseph Walker met them and said at first her son was not there. Then she said she thought he was, and Ellis and Northcutt started into the next room. Confrontation with Walker. Patrolman Beeman joined Ellis in the house. Patrolman Northcutt, in order to keep guard on the front of the house with Ice, ran to the front and heard Walker trying to open the window. He shined his flashlight at the window and Walker left it and entered the room where Ellis and Beeman were. Seeing Walker's drawn revolver, Ellis fired. Walker returned the fire. Hearing the gunfire, Northcutt ran into the rear of the house. Walker was shot at by Beeman before he got out of range. He ran into his mother's bedroom on the west side of the house, jumped from a window and ran to the front fence and vaulted it. Ice had run in onto the veranda, but when he heard Walker going over the fence, he started towards him and fell from the veranda, severely hurting his leg. He could pursue no further, but shot twice at Walker, missing him with both shots. Chief John Ellis. Walker's shot struck the 33-year-old Alexandria chief of police in the stomach. Ellis was able to return fire, striking Walker in the left arm just below the elbow. The party of officers got Ellis into Sam Lambert's car, which was in the bottom of the ravine 200 feet away, and brought him to the Alexandria Hospital before continuing the search. The assisting officers' response to their fallen leader allowed the wounded Walker to escape. Ellis was taken to the same hospital where Kirkman had died a few hours earlier. That is the Alexandria Hospital. The picture is dated 1908. His wounds were determined to be critical as a bullet had passed completely through his body. Chief Ellis died shortly after 3 o'clock Monday afternoon after a 2-hour surgery on Sunday night. He had requested his family be brought to his bedside, but died before his 2 children, 7-year-old Corrine and 3-year-old Robert, could get there. The bullet wound which Ellis received was on the left side of the abdomen, just below the ribs. The ball penetrated the abdominal cavity at the base of the left lung and also ruptured the blood vessels leading to the intestines. It was to relieve the bleeding, cleanse the abdominal cavity, and carry off the gas and decomposed material which was forming that led to the operation Sunday evening. Although on the table for more than 2 hours, he withstood it well and seemed to be improving. However, his condition steadily became worse and pneumonia developed, which quickly proved fatal. Day 2. Events now moved quickly. Alexandria was described as being in a state of highest excitement as hundreds took to the streets. The crowd was so large that it was decided to transport Warren to the Anderson jail, where he arrived early Sunday morning around 1:30 a.m. At 3:10 a.m., a posse of 40 gathered in downtown Alexandria, waiting for bloodhounds to arrive to begin the manhunt for Walker. Day 3. Walker's capture occurred about 4 Monday morning in a barn on the farm of Mrs. Emma Remington, northwest of Frankton. He had eaten supper consisting of bread and butter, meat and potatoes, and 2 cups of coffee about 6 o'clock the night before at her farmhouse, and had been given permission to sleep in the barn. Later that evening, 19-year-old Lon Remington, her son, went to Frankton and told authorities he suspected the lodger. Sheriff Mountain was called and dispatched a carload of searchers in Sam Lambert's fastest machine to the barn, where they found Walker wrapped in a canvas on the barn floor near the door, sound asleep. Walker awoke with 4 or 5 guns pointed at his face, one of which was held by Alva Ice. This is Dr. Joel Cook's office in Orestes. Walker later told how he ran to the L.E.N.W. railroad located 300 feet from his father's house after he had shot Ellis. He walked the tracks to Orestes, where he tried to get his wounded arm attended by Dr. Cook, but the doctor was too ill to help. He claimed he was in Elwood Sunday afternoon and decided to head for Frankton via the Panhandle Railroad tracks. When he became so weak, he stopped at the farm for food and rest. This is the site of the Ellis shooting, the Walker home, and this is the railroad tracks where Walker would have escaped to begin his way towards Orestes and eventually Elwood. Those are those tracks today. By now, Walker had been returned to Anderson and was jailed with Warren. Citizens who were already angered by the killing of Kirkman learned of Ellis's death. Mob violence was now feared, and a lynching became a possibility. Both prisoners were transported by Sheriff Mountain and Anderson Chief of Police Pritchard by car to the Marion County Jail in Indianapolis for safekeeping at 6 p.m., where they stayed for 1 week. They were returned by Interurban a week later, arriving late on the night of March 13th. Day 6. A double funeral was held on Thursday, March 9th at the Alexandria Methodist Church. 1 hour before the service, the church was filled to overflowing. 2 separate marching columns escorted the bodies to the church, one coming from the north and the other from the south. Meeting at Harrison and Broadway, they formed a double column, and the hearses were then driven side by side to the church. Kirkman lived north of the church, Ellis lived south of the church. Both bodies were picked up, brought up Harrison Street. In a simultaneous timing, the hearses were then put together and formed and went side by side down to the church. This is a picture of Virgil Kirkman given to me by his granddaughter, and I would point out to you that he's got 2 missing fingers. These are the hearses. There's 2 of them here. You can't see the second one outside of the Methodist Church the day of the funeral. An hour and 1/2 was required for everyone to pass by the caskets, which delayed the start to the cemetery until 5:30. At the close of the service, 2 horse-drawn hearses, driven side by side, led the procession to the Oddfellows Cemetery that contained more than 1,000 mourners, including Walker's father and brother. Just as the shades of night were falling that Thursday evening, the bodies were lowered into their final resting place. It had been the greatest funeral demonstration ever held in Alexandria. This is really a unique picture. It is that afternoon, how the streets are lined. This would be Broadway and how it's lined. These are officers, probably as they do today, from all over the state, came to Alexandria to pay their respects. The scene 1911 and the scene today, you see in the house, this house in the background here. By this time, both Warren and Walker had been returned to Anderson, and the story shifts from being sensational to one filled with happenings that today seem bizarre. If you are a member of law enforcement or you are a member of the judicial system, listen carefully to what you're going to hear. I would be interested in your comments after this is over. The first of these occurred during Walker's interrogation. He told that as a boy he'd played with Kirkman and liked him and always spoke to him on the streets. He also said the two were members of the same secret order. That I could not find out what that was. Day 12. The wheels of justice moved quickly. The grand jury met on March 15th, 12 days since the shootings, and returned 3 indictments against Walker. 2 indictments for the first-degree murder, one for Kirkman and the other for Ellis. The third was for the robbery of the pawn shop. Walker pleaded not guilty to the first 2, but guilty to the third. Warren's 2 indictments were for the murder of Kirkman and for pointing a deadly weapon against Alva Ice, the man who first told police where they could find Warren and was there when Walker was captured. Walker later said, quote, "Oh, if I could only recall those deeds, I wish they had killed me instead of me killing them. They were both fine men," close quote. Day 31. The trial for James W. Walker began at April 3rd in the Madison County Courthouse, seen in the distance. 31 days since the shooting of Alexandria's Chief of Police John Elvis and Patrolman Virgil Kirkman. That's swift justice. The entire day was spent impaneling the jury. The day before, Walker's wife and children were allowed to visit him in his jail cell. That is the Madison County Jail at the time of this in 1911. During the visit, Walker asked the sheriff for permission to have a photographer come to the jail and take a group picture of the family in the cell. Permission was granted. Kirkman's sister came to the jail asking to see Walker for a moment, but was not permitted. This is a newspaper article showing the jurors that were finally selected. All of them are non-Alexandria people, I believe, all from in other parts of the county. That is Walker, April 3rd. While the jury was being selected, Walker's family was seated behind the table where he sat on the west side of the courtroom. Walker was dressed in a neat-fitting brown suit and wore clean white linen, collar and tie. His hair was carefully combed and he was clean-shaven. That's a picture of him described. A sharp contrast to his appearance the night of the shooting when he wore a rather old coat, overalls, and a cap. He was described as being rather small, 5'9", 160 pounds, to the extent that the courtroom chairs were too large for him. I did read up on that a little bit further and found out that his feet, the chair set so high his feet did not touch the floor. Another description. He was described as one of the most quiet and genteel outlaws. It's kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? Genteel outlaw. Ever put in the Madison County Jail. He is slight of figure and weighs probably not more than 140 pounds. He has dark hair, dark complexion, with peculiarly handsome dark eyes. However, when drinking, he became dangerous and had an unlimited nerve and was feared because of his deadly aim with a gun. He stated that he'd read a great many dime novels the last year and that Deadwood Dick was one of his favorites. Mrs. Walker was dressed in black and wore a black fascinator. Ladies, I had to look up what a fascinator is. You all know it, but it's a head lace, crocheted. Nearby were his sister and father. His children were allowed to play around the table where their father sat. Now picture a courtroom. There were 2 small boys, ages 5 and 6, and a daughter almost 2. She frequently climbed upon her father's lap. You don't suppose they were trying to appeal to the jury, were they? A baby was in the mother's lap. On the east side of the courtroom, opposite Walker, was another picture. There sat Mrs. Bertha Kirkman in deep mourning and great distress. She kept a handkerchief to her eyes most of the day. Some of her relatives were with her and occasionally sought to comfort her. Robert Ellis, father of the slain chief of police, was there as well. Day 32. Walker took the witness stand for the next day, April 4th, following his plea change of innocent to guilty to the killing of Kirkman. The trial lasted only one day, and the jury recommended life imprisonment the next morning. The recommendation, which took 15 hours to decide, came after several deliberations over either a life sentence or death by hanging. Agreement was finally reached on the 20th ballot. Walker seemed to be fearful that the verdict would be death. Upon hearing the sentence, Walker gave a deep, long sigh and said to his attorney, quote, "That's better than I expected," close quote. None of his relatives were in court. Rufus Warren's trial commenced later that same day with jury selection. The trial took place the following day. Walker was one of the first witnesses and testified that he and Warren had planned the holdup and that Warren was to stand guard while he did the work. Charged with being an accessory to both murders, he was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment at 8 o'clock that same night. Except his attorneys and the deputy sheriffs, not a person throughout the trial spoke to Warren on any question. He seemed indifferent to the throng that gazed upon him. He displayed no emotion at any time and heard the verdict with no evidence of effect upon him. Day 36. On April 8th, 36 days since the shooting and only 6 days after the first trial began, both men were delivered to the Indiana State Prison at Michigan City to begin serving their life sentences. They were escorted by Patrolman Fred Stokes and Deputy Tom Broderick. Stokes relieved Mountain. I've asked Mayor Broderick here in Anderson, that would be his grandfather, and if his grandfather was in the police work, and he said, I'm going to have to check into that. I've not heard back from him before, but I assume that that is the case. They left Anderson at 5 a.m. on a traction car for Muncie, and then boarded a Lake Erie Railroad train for Tipton, and there transferred to a train direct to Michigan City. The train carrying them to prison passed through Alexandria about 7:30, where it stopped, and Walker's wife boarded the train and accompanied her husband to Tipton. Just west of the Plate Glass Works, Walker took one last glance at his parents' home as the train rolled by. Word spread through Elwood like wildfire that morning, and a large crowd was at the station when the train arrived. When the train passed through Elwood, Walker waved his handcuffed hands to several acquaintances and seemed to enjoy the notoriety. Warren, who seemed greatly downcast, did not look out of the window during the short stop there. Each prisoner wore a pair of nickel-plated steel bracelets. Friends and companions for life, they had become enemies. Walker was hopeful that by good conduct that sometime after 10 years an application for parole might be considered. This is the nickel plate or L.E.N.W. station in Elwood that they would have passed by, where he waved to his friends. Now we jump ahead to August 24th, 1915. On August 24th, 1915, Walker was granted a parole to return to Alexandria to visit his sick mother. Now, how many prisoners are let out of prison to go visit a sick relative? I don't know that that happens. 6 days later, he returned to prison. Apparently, few people knew about the visit because it came off without incident. However, the following year was a totally different story. December the 23rd, 1916. On December 23rd, 1916, Walker arrived in Alexandria. He'd been paroled to spend Christmas with his parents. Think about that. After seeing his parents, Walker and his guard appeared on the city streets. John Kirkman, father of the murdered policeman, saw Walker at the corner of Harrison and Washington Streets and attempted to get at him, but was prevented by his son-in-law. 15 minutes later, Robert Ellis, father of the murdered police chief, saw Walker and declared that he would kill him if given an opportunity. This is that intersection. Outraged citizens pressured Mayor J.F. Wales to have him removed from town to prevent violence. The mayor telephoned Governor Ralston, who ordered Walker to be returned to Michigan City at once. Walker was removed from his parents' home and placed aboard the last traction car to Marion. I got curious about what happened to these people. So I called Michigan City Prison, and I was put through to a secretary to the warden, and I said, I'm looking for records of 2 prisoners that were there in 1911 for some period of time. And she said, well, Mr. Jackson, she says, I can't help you right now. She says, we are inundated with the press. There is an execution here today. And she says, I can't help you. But she says, I can tell you this, we do not have those records stored in Michigan City Prison. I said, where are they? She said, well, we send them all to the Indiana State Archives in Indianapolis when they're that old. So I called the Indiana State Archives in Indianapolis. I got a hold of a nice young man, picked up the phone. I told him what I wanted. He says, I can help you. He said, hold on just a moment. He was gone maybe 5 minutes and came back. He says, I got everything you need. Everything you need. He says, I got their complete files, pictures, and the whole bit. Would you like to have copies of them? I said, absolutely. So he sent them to me, and from that information is now what you're going to hear. An investigation in his release revealed that after 5 years in prison, Walker repented for his crimes. A year later, he became a trustee and a head nurse in the prison hospital with many prison privileges. Further examination of his prison records reveals that he was granted a total of 12 temporary paroles from 1915 through 1935, totaling 111 days that he was out of prison. Think of that. Most occurred while he was still serving a life sentence. Walker's sentence was commuted from life to 25 years to life, from life to 25 years to life by Governor Harry G. Leslie on August 1st, 1931. And on April 3rd, 1936, James W. Walker was released from prison, having completed his sentence of 25 years. Warren's sentence was also reduced, as he was paroled by Governor James P. Goodrich July the 10th, 1918. His final discharge occurred on October the 14th, 1920. He'd served 9.5 years for his part in the crimes. Apparently, Rufus Warren did not return to Alexandria, as no further record of him exists. And let me tell you, I searched hard and wide for a Rufus Warren in the census records wherever I could. You can't believe how many people in the United States are named Rufus Warren. I always thought Smith and Jones was, boy, I'm telling you, there are a lot of Rufus Warrens. They're all different ages. They all have different information. I could not nail down which one was my Rufus Warren. This is a picture. They did not photograph them when they went into the prison. They photographed them upon release. And this is Walker's release at age 55. And this is Warren's release picture when he was 36 years old. Walker. However, James Walker did return to Alexandria. He was employed by the Aladdin Industries in Alexandria beginning on September the 22nd, 1942. I've talked to people who remember working with him and described to me what he was like. Their description was he was very quiet, kept to himself. He was a janitor in the plant and basically did not interact with the people there at all. He took a sick leave in December 1951 and did not return to work. On July 3rd, 1952, friends found him lying on the side lawn of his home in the Scott Addition, where he had apparently been stricken by a heart attack. He died at St. John's Hospital at 3:30 in the afternoon, July 4th, 1952. This is a picture. He's buried in the Parkview Cemetery near his parents, Joseph and Martella Walker. 1911, John and Alice Ellis, their home was at 806 South Harrison Street. Virgil and Bertha Kirkman's home in 1911 was this one at 218 West Tyler. James and Laura Walker's home was here at 933 West Washington Street. And finally, in 1908, 1909, I found Rufus Warren living in this address, 937 West Washington Street. The Walker children. Walker's obituary lists the names of his survivors, who include his son Thurman and daughters Bernice and Viola. This is the first mention that I had found of Viola. 4 Walker children, Thurman, Elmer, Clarence, and Bernice, became wards of the county in April of 1912 and were placed in the Madison County Orphans' Home. They were there only 2 months when the court awarded custody of the children to their mother, Laura Walker. Laura Walker's mother and James Walker's parents shared in the care of the children by taking the children into their homes in Alexandria. All 4 decrees of guardianship state that there was a 5th child, but no other information. Perhaps the 5th child was only an infant and left in the care of the grandparents, because a baby would have been too young to go into an orphanage. The 5th child was probably Viola. That's a picture of the Madison County Orphans' Home where they lived. That would have been at 2516 Columbus Avenue in Anderson. Laura Walker. Laura found work in Kokomo and Logansport, where she worked in restaurants and hotels, sending money to help support the children. Sometime in 1916, the 4 children moved with their maternal grandmother to Muncie. Laura Walker later joined them there and lived with them for a while. She later remarried. The Ellis family. Alice Ellis remained a widow and died in 1953. Her son Robert preceded her in death in 1936, dying of appendicitis at the age of 28. Daughter Corrine was a lifelong resident of Alexandria and passed away in 1989 at the age of 85. Both Alice and Robert are buried near John in the Oddfellows Cemetery. Also buried there is Ruth, who died in infancy. This is the Ellis estate in the Oddfellows Cemetery. Alice, Robert, and Ruth appears on the backside of John Ellis's stone. Virgil Kirkman, also in the Oddfellows Cemetery. This is his final resting place. And James Walker in Parkview Cemetery. If you know Alexandria at all, the 2 cemeteries are side by side. The Kirkman family. Patrolman Virgil Kirkman was survived by his wife Bertha and their 6-month-old son, John Virgil Kirkman. Bertha remarried and moved to Milton, Indiana. Their son John lived in Anderson and passed away in 1987. This is the Kirkman family taken in 1938. You see Bertha here, who is the widow. This is her son John, and this is her mother, Jenny Klein, and this is his daughter, Susan Ellis, Susan Kirkman, now Susan Mills. John Ellis is buried in the Oddfellows Cemetery, and his headstone is within sight of fellow policeman Virgil Kirkman's headstone. Ellis and Kirkman's headstones are within sight of James Walker's grave in the adjacent Parkview Cemetery. The final bizarre twist of this amazing story. And here I show you Kirkman, Ellis, and Walker. A postscript. From the March 7th, 1911 Anderson Herald. Walker has for years, in a way, been a terror in Alexandria, and the public would doubtless appreciate a quick riddance of the case. They're speaking of the trial. Though never prosecuted, he was in several scrapes. Once he shot out the lights in a hall at Alexandria, and at another time he had a fight with Warren, who roomed at his home, and with a razor cut Warren's clothing to shreds, but did not injure him. On another occasion, he shot a man and left the city for about a year. When he returned, he was not prosecuted because the prosecuting witness had moved away. Walker's home is one of the humblest in Alexandria. Alva Ice. Born in 1869. I had to find out about this guy. November the 2nd, 1908, I find him in Summitville. He's shot and wounded by Frank Hundley in a blind tiger raid. Now, do you know what a blind tiger is? Well, a blind tiger in 1908, the Temperance Society had asked for alcohol to be prohibited, and so that it did occur for a short time, and so taverns would be known as blind tigers that sold alcohol. You could go to there and still buy alcohol and supposedly not be found out in a blind tiger. He was a resident of Alexandria for a number of years. He engaged in saloon and restaurant business. Shortly after returning to Summitville, he joined a church. From Alexandria Times Tribune, May 2nd, 1921, I found the following. Quote, Alva Heiss, formerly of this city, now a resident of Summitville, is assisting in a revival meeting at the United Brethren Church, Elwood. Yesterday, he delivered an address to his subject, being experienced from the bar room to the pulpit. Alva's experience has been such as to qualify him to talk intelligently on the subject. This is from the Alexandria Times Tribune. He died October 31, 1921, and boy was he hard to find. There are lots of Alva Heisses. However, I found him in Delaware County. This is his headstone here. My car, I didn't drive in any further. There were lots of creepy critters crawling in the... So I stepped lightly and took this picture and then left. You see the police chief Ellis here in this picture. Why I did this, why I did it, I don't know. For I remember nothing of the thing. My family were not in greater need than at any other time. That's a quote by James Walker, March 6, 1911. Appreciation. I would like to express my sincere thanks and appreciation to Mr. Larry Maple, past president of the Alexandria Monroe Township Historical Society Museum, and to Janet Ellis for their valuable assistance in researching this story. Thanks also to Susie Kirkman Mills, the granddaughter of Virgil Kirkman. She supplied me the picture of Patrolman Kirkman in the casket. This presentation is dedicated to the memory of Chief Ellis and Patrolman Kirkman and to the officers of the Alexandria Police Department, past and present. Well, 36 days were over, and Alexandria returned to normal. For the next 16 years, life in Alexandria returned to normal. Tragically, in 1927, it happened again. Alexandria, Indiana, Chief of Police Opal J. Hughes murdered. Opal is coming to see me. Just watch what happens to him. And with that, I'm done. I hope you enjoyed it.
Let me call you sweetheart, I'm in love with you. Let me hear your whisper.